Hello and welcome to Nick and Mel's Hyperspace. I'm Nick, your host here, and I have a very special episode for you guys planned. We have a very special guest. First, I want to welcome back to the show Justin, who has been my steady co-pilot the last few months. Justin, welcome
Hello
back.
there.
Thank you for being here. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about the meat of the episode. At the top, we're going to mainly discuss the 4-issue miniseries titled Ewoks that started last fall, and I believe the last issue came out in January of this year. Reason we're kind of touching on it now is the trade paperback is coming out soon, and we kind of wanted to promote it a little bit and to get people interested in it. And we have the genius brain behind that little miniseries with us today, Mr. Steve Orlando.
Hey.
Thank you for being here.
Hey,
we
welcome.
appreciate you. Yes.
Yep. Happy to be on. It's my first Ewoks podcast, so I'm especially excited.
Oh, really? Cool.
Sweet.
So we're honored to be the first. That's pretty fun. You don't have a very extensive background in Star Wars, but we will talk a little bit about some of your other work and highlight it. And we'd like to kind of pick your brain about your journey in comics. And before we get into all that, kind of do a little housekeeping. So, new thing we're doing here on Nick and Mel's Hyperspace. My background is in social work, and we've live unprecedented times right now. If you follow the news at all, or any variation of the news, you notice there's a lot of problems in our country and around the world. So I wanted to start doing a little segment where I highlight a nonprofit around the world and kind of talk about their work a little bit. And I will plug the link to their website in the show notes and in the description of each episode. But this week I wanted to talk about it because it seems very topical given our recent news with conflict in Iran, talking about the Children in Conflict nonprofit that is based in New York. Basically what they do is any children that are affected by war and terrorism, they kind of offer mental health services, aid, whether it come to like food, clothing, things like that, to kind of offer them support and give them a safe environment as possible to live in during those unprecedented times. If you guys are like me, I have a bleeding heart, and I see on Instagram or TikTok, I'll see videos of children in Gaza or children in Ukraine the last couple of years, and it is very heartbreaking. So I wanted to use the vehicle of Star Wars in my podcast to kind of promote them and kind of spread some positivity in the world. So if you are inclined to or able to, check them out, donate. Also important to help out your local communities, find things that you can do. I know being one person, it feels like there's so many problems in the world. Each of us are not going to be able to solve all those problems in a day, but do what you can in your local communities, in your backyards. If you can donate to Children in Conflict, check them out, spread their message. I think it's a really important nonprofit. If you guys have nonprofits that you'd like me to highlight or any that you're aware of that I'm not, comment on the video, send me an email, let me know, and I will highlight them on a future episode. So with that being said, Justin, you had a laundry list of Steve's work and his background. You went full research mode for us. So I'm going to let you kind of introduce it and go with the flow there.
Steve, if you don't mind, I was going to sing your praises for any listeners that want to get to know you a little bit. So I was going to give a brief background, and I'm probably going to miss some stuff. Please add or take away anything that I may have thrown in there that I shouldn't have, or if I'm missing anything, please do.
All right.
I'm just going to tell everyone a quick preview about you. So I understand you went to Hamilton College up in New York, studied Russian and creative writing. You went on to edit and work for DC Comics or Vertigo after that. Then you went to publish your first, I believe it was your first comic in 2015 called Midnighter for DC, where you got a GLAAD nomination. And IO9 named this comic one of the 20 best of 2015. So that's pretty awesome right there.
That's pretty cool. Nice.
After that, you went on to work in the DC Rebirth Initiative, working on Batman and Robin Eternal, Supergirl, Justice League. You did a 2018 Wonder Woman run, and I guess issue 51 was named by reviewers as one of the best standalone Wonder Woman comics ever written. That's pretty awesome right there. After that, Martian Manhunter, 12-issue series. First issue named one of Tween's best by Tor Books. After that, we introduce you to Marvel, where you come and do a Life Day comic. Then you write Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, Spider-Verse, the 2099 series, X-Men, Avengers, Ewoks, and Vader, Black, White, and Red. So where are you going next?
Oh, man.
Wow. What a laundry list.
Where am I going next?
He's been busy.
I know. Well, what is next for me? I actually am part of Nothing Is Not a Franchise of Star Wars prominence, but this fall, I'm part of the new initiative from the Valiant universe, and I'm doing Exo Manowar, which I mean, I love the Valiant universe. I love the comics business. That being said, if you can work on Exo in that universe, you take that book, right? Because I think he's like the seminal character, one of the seminal characters at minimum. And as far as like what's next with me in sci-fi, that's going to be that book. It is very accessible for new readers. Valiant Beyond is, call it what you want, Ultimate Valiant or Absolute Valiant. Like the point is we're getting to the heart of these characters, and we're going to let people right in the door with no barrier to entry. And I'm really, really excited about that. As far as Star Wars stuff, I don't know that you'll see more immediately, but I did listen. While it hasn't been much overall, hey, it's still been more than the vast majority of creators. So I'm still a very lucky guy. I'm going to be sticking around in science fiction, though. You'll see me. I mean, I'm still working on Gotcha Man, which is coming out from Mad Cave right now. Me, Tommy Lee Edwards, and Cullen Bunn are writing the books in that franchise. You're going to see stepping into like the animation side. I'm launching Magical Mysteries of Shazam at DC, which is a Miyazaki Studio Ghibli inspired take on Shazam that really is like our love letter to the original C.C. Beck stuff. That sort of whimsy really fits the Miyazaki vibe. And so we're trying to fuse the two with the best of everything that came after. So there'll be a touch of the Mandrake run from the 80s. There'll be a touch of the Frank and John's run, but the core is really doing like the classic Captain Marvel stories from C.C. Beck with that sort of modern twist, like if it was coming out today. So I'm super, super excited for that. And that's launching in July. And I'm trying forgetting stuff because I'm all over the place. But, and of course, Scarlet Witch is coming out. It's the book that keeps chugging along that I've probably written more than any other book at this point ever. And we're coming out with like a Lovecraft inspired arc right now with Vision and Scarlet Witch. Mm-hmm. And then after that, there is more. I don't think I can announce what it is yet, but there is even more after that where Wanda's going to go back in her solo adventures again. In a whole new context with an artistic collaborator that I can tease I've worked with once before at Marvel on a single issue. And it was one of my favorite issues I've ever done. So to have him back on this new series, super, super, super exciting. Wish I could full on say what it is, but for folks who are good at math, which is not me, I've told the world that I am on Scarlet Witch at least into 2026. And there's not that many issues of Vision and Scarlet Witch. So there's definitely more to come.
When you say Lovecraft inspired, what do you mean?
Well, what I mean is a complicated legal quandary, which I'm sure is why you asked the question. Definitely. So for players of Marvel versus Capcom and things like that, who know characters like Shuma Gorath, or if you saw like the Dweller in Darkness in Shang-Chi, for example, a lot of those characters entered the Marvel Universe either from Doctor Strange, especially in the 70s, or from when they originally had the Marvel license and were doing, or pardon me, I misspoke, when they originally had the Conan license and were doing Conan stories set within the Marvel Universe. This is where a lot of the Lovecraft-style gods that exist even today and play around in Marvel books come from. You saw another one, Gargantos, in Multiverse of Madness, the movies. With Vision and Scarlet Witch, we were looking at parts of the cosmogony that weren't really pinned down for a book, right? Like a lot of Heaven and Hell, that's kind of where Ghost Rider hangs out. A lot of the sort of shinier, more gilded cosmic beings, you're seeing them right now in Storm and Phoenix. So we wanted to carve out somewhere we could work and sort of build out our lore. This became the great old ones who are going to play in the book. And the cool thing about it that comes all the way back from the Lovecraft stuff is, they were always described as extra universal, extra dimensional. So as we present them in the book, and we know the rules of magic to an extent, the rules of the Marvel cosmos, the rules of physics in the Marvel universe, but these aren't characters that necessarily have to subscribe to those things. And even their magic is a more primitive, raw form that isn't necessarily more powerful than magic in the Marvel universe, but it is more volatile. We describe it as the nitroglycerin to modern magic's TNT. So it can be very, very intimidating, even for someone like Wanda, even for someone like Doctor Strange. But to answer, to go all the way back, the reason it's complicated is with Conan coming in and out, there's always a question of which of these characters can still show up in a Marvel book. But that only applies to stuff that comes from the Robert E. Howard side. I believe, I'm knocking on all the wood I have, that stuff that debuted specifically in Lovecraft is all public domain right now. As to why those characters are in a shared universe, Robert Howard and Lovecraft were friends back in the Alive days.
Right.
Interesting.
I always think of Lovecraft whenever I see Man-Thing show up in comics, which I think you have some history writing that with Avengers and the Man-Thing.
Yes, the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to write that and the introduction to the Marvel Masterworks Man-Thing book. So they've been very good to me on that side of things at Marvel.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah. It always makes me think of the Cthulhu whenever I see him.
Yes.
Oh my God, my squid bearded man. Yeah, I mean, who does not love that guy? He's just chilling at the bottom of the ocean, waiting to destroy us all. And as someone who lives near the ocean, I think about it more than most, probably.
So, Steve, you have a long list of things, and I'm going to be honest with you. I did not know who you were, and I've read some of your other work until Scarlet Witch. Me and my wife were pulling Scarlet Witch because we love Scarlet Witch a lot because of WandaVision and Multiverse Madness. We kind of got into her character, and you actually wrote a Image series years ago. Not years ago. I don't know what time is anymore. Commanders in Crisis.
I did. That was 2020.
2020. I remember it was pandemic, and that 2020 was actually when I started collecting single issues.
Right
I was just doing like trade paperbacks and omnibuses and stuff back then, and then I got into it, and then COVID hit, and that kind of it didn't stop me, but I started supporting more single issues and stories. But I read that, and that's a fascinating series. Never made the connection that was you for some reason until I saw your Scarlet Witch series, and I was like, oh, I have seen that name before. So that was just one.
I appreciate it. Commanders in Crisis is a book I think about a lot without tooting my horn too much. Long ago, one of my friends said, the problem with being ahead of the curve is people like the curve. So that book came out in 2020, and you may be the first person to ask about it or mention it of your own volition. To that end, I mean, for folks who haven't picked it up, I mean, I encourage you to. It's the very short elevator pitch is that this is the book where I took all the ideas that I couldn't do at DC because they were too weird or too provocative, and I put them all in one superhero book that was an original, because I had been exclusive to DC for 5 years. But this is a book about the death of empathy. The empathy gets murdered in the first issue, and then at the same time, the government is pushing, I believe I call it the American Independence Act or something like that. Basically, a simultaneous 50-state secession, or 52 states in this book because we have extra states, because it's an original and we can do what we want. A simultaneous secession of essentially, we don't want to take care of each other, but if anyone else steps to America, we'll still catch each other's back. Essentially, I can beat up my brother, but no one else can. So it's a book about the country voluntarily falling apart as empathy dies. And, some might say that there's a certain relevance to that now.
There's a very strong ellipses right there. Very strong ellipses. Yeah. So here's the cover for Commanders in Crisis. That is the trade paperback right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little close to home right now, but
it does have a happy ending.
It does. It does have a good ending.
If not the one that people would probably want, it is a positive ending. And in addition to that, it's a book that has characters like Dr. Dracula, the supernatural super taster. I feel sometimes that this book is written by the ghost of Gardner Fox, who's haunting me, which is okay. I mean, that would work very much for me. I pity that he has to watch my sad life, but otherwise, I'm happy to have him on board if that's the case.
I like that series a lot. It's been many years since I read it, so I need to reread it again. But I really enjoyed it when it was coming out.
I appreciate it.
I have a question. If you could choose any character to write about, whether it be Marvel or DC right now, and you're given free reign to write whatever you want about them, who would you pick?
It would be the Shadow, which actually isn't Marvel or DC, but he's my favorite character in the business. And I've only gotten to write him twice. I did a Batman Shadow crossover, and a sequel Shadow Batman crossover, but I've never gotten to write a single series, a solo series. So that would almost always be my answer, but especially now, because this is a guy to whom, no mind is hidden, and with the message, the judgment and justice comes for all. Even, he's the guy, even more than Batman, that makes the people that make us afraid feel afraid. So, yeah, I mean, listen, there's a primal catharsis to that character that I think would be extra appealing in the current moment. But to be clear, it's hard for me not to always answer the Shadow, because I love the mystery of it. And some of that even goes to the fact that his powers are still vague and undefined. I think that he's a character that challenges us to sort of deal with what we aren't allowed to know. And a lot of times in modern comics, that mystery doesn't necessarily exist because we want that internal narration that tells us every little thing. And that's fine for some books, but I've always thought the mystery and what's unknown about the Shadow makes him really, really appealing.
I was reading that about when you wrote that. Was that by both point of views? Because you wrote one that was Batman Shadow, and then the other second one was Shadow of Batman, right?
Well, the reality, so what it actually was a little deal between publishers, right? And it's kind of an ode to '90s crossovers, where, like, for example, when the first time Spawn and Batman crossed over, the deal was that Image could publish one called Spawn Batman, and DC could publish one called Batman Spawn, and that's kind of what happened here. We, Dynamite and DC had working together and cut the deal. They knew they wanted Scott involved. Of course, who knows Batman better than Scott Snyder? The gag was that I wasn't even known at the office as being a huge Shadow fan, and Scott wasn't as familiar with that character. So when the first book came together, it was like, let's take this guy that has this deep knowledge of Batman. Let's take this at least self-avowed massive fan of the Shadow, who at minimum knows more about him than anyone at the DC offices, and let's put him together to get the story going. So we did that DC one, and then when the ball flipped, Dynamite asked if I wanted to do the whole thing myself, and I was in. The additional thing for me was that we got to put Damian Wayne in and Ed Robin, and of course use new villains. We used the Joker, as you might imagine, in Batman Shadow, and then we created a new villain for the Shadow called the Stag, who, if folks clocked it or not, is essentially a villainous version of the Phantom. He's a villain who the Shadow thinks is immortal, but the reality is that everyone in this family just takes up the costume every time one of them dies. And because the Shadow can't seem to stop from killing these people, he never interrogates them to find out. So he just thinks that this guy can't die. And then in the second one, we got to use Ra's al Ghul and Shawan Khan, which, once again, I was really, really excited to have them play off each other's point of view to an extent. There's more of the Shadow's world in the one where he's the lead character. The Batman Shadow crossover takes place in Gotham, but you still have the classics in both of them. You still have Margot Lane. I mean, actually, if I look to the right, I can see most of the pages on my wall are from the Batman Shadow crossover that I bought from Riley. So clearly it holds a space in my heart. The only solution, of course, is to somehow do another sequel and complete the trilogy sometime.
So is it safe to say that the 1994 Alec Baldwin Shadow movie is your favorite superhero movie?
There are scenes in that movie that are some of my favorite Shadow moments and overall moments. I don't know that I could say that about that whole movie, but that was but I love it for what it is. That was an era where everything had to be Batman, even if it wasn't. And, that's fine. And there are moments of that where I think it's very much right. His glee at driving Tim Curry insane and driving him to his death is very much in character. I mean, he's not a good dude. He's a scary dude. It's what Scott and I were talking about in the book. Batman is about justice or obsession, but the Shadow's about punishment. Like, he does not necessarily specifically care about the people he's saving. Batman's there to save a person. The Shadow is there to punish a criminal. Those are the priorities. Mm-hmm. And he's really punishing himself in that instance, because once again, he was coerced into becoming the Shadow. So, I mean, he is a dark and sinister person. He's a dark and sinister person who is on our side. But so, yeah, I think that is very much him. How much he enjoys, torturing the gangsters at the beginning, using his network to give Shawan Khan a lobotomy is perhaps a little arch for him, but the vindictiveness is there, So there are aspects of it that I really, really like. But I have a whole Shadow screenplay I wrote that will never get made. Hopefully someday, that could become, Absolute Shadow or whatever. Again, whatever marketing term you would like. But I love that he is, so many of these stories are, the wronged kid, the pathos comes from the outside. But the Shadow is essentially his own pathos. He was not a good person in a bad situation. I mean, he was an absolute piece of garbage who was forcefully put on the path to redemption. And I think that even though this character is almost, he's 90 plus, coming on 90 years old, it's pretty unique. And it's still something that I think is really interesting.
Wasn't he one of the characters that was owned by a previous comic company before DC bought it, along with the Spirit?
So those are different companies, but it's worth noting DC doesn't own the Shadow. That's still out there to be licensed. But it is, so yeah, the characters kind of do have little like families now. I don't believe that the Shadow is in the same one as the Spirit. He is in the same sort of like character family as Doc Savage, the Avenger, things like that, Justice Inc. That's why you saw all the DC putting out all of those books. Ironically, there wasn't a Shadow one there, but it's why you saw it was called First Wave. Those characters are all sort of in one family. And then you have like the King Features characters, which you'll see usually paired together as well, like the Phantom and Flash Gordon. people like that. But yeah, they're actually, the Shadow is owned by a magazine company. It's owned by Condé Nast.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Piggyback off Justin's question, in terms of Star Wars, is there a character? You've written Vader, and now you've written some Ewoks, and you've featured some interesting characters in there. Is there a Star Wars character that you would love to just get your hands on and run with?
Oh, there is, but it would never happen, and it's the Bendu.
Oh, the
Wow.
That would be trippy.
I think when a character is voiced by Tom Baker, they only let like the big deals write him. Like maybe only Dave Filoni can write the Bendu, which is totally fine, by the way.
Fair.
But it's still my answer because I love that
That would be
character.
cool.
I mean, it's perhaps the reason I like the Bendu is, and it's perhaps blasphemous. I don't know. I'm not trying to make enemies in the Star Wars community. One of the things that I always thought wasn't bad, but there was room to develop was the idea of, look at the world, right? Like we have our physics, we have our, we all have the same basic rules, and yet we have hundreds of religions in the world. So I've always thought that if, for a long time, the dark side and the light side were presented as like absolute truths. And the Force, like if you believed in the Force, you were a Jedi or a Sith for the most part. But I've always thought that was relatively unrealistic. And again, not that it's bad; it's a great place to start. But if the Force were real, you would have things like we've seen with like the Night Sisters, and and I forget if that's who they were in the Acolyte as well. But there would be a lot of different approaches to it, and a lot of, and that doesn't even necessarily mean that what was considered good to some would be considered good to everybody. And so when you had a character like the Bendu who didn't really believe in or subscribe to the dark side or the light side, I was really excited about that because I just always thought, again, I mean, like, listen, it's not even a criticism; it's room to grow and expand. And I've always that's always interested me.
Yeah, I like that famous line he says in the Rebel show where he says, "I'm somewhere in the middle."
Yeah.
You don't know exactly where he falls. He's probably got a balance of both in there.
Well, and it's just an interesting concept, like you said, that in the movies, it's really just Jedi Sith animated shows. They've shown the Night Sisters and shown the Bendu and kind of dived a little more into the Force religion. So, yeah, that's something I think Star Wars Publishing could definitely dive into, whether it be novels or comics, because the High Republic's done a cool job of that. But Bendu was definitely somebody that's got room to grow.
And yeah, and those are that's just room to do more and make it richer. Like it's not even a critique. I have the same, listen, I'm on here, you'll learn all my science fiction pet peeves. Another one is that, and it's similar to the thing with the Force, I would just, I always find it amusing that, of course, we have hundreds of languages on this planet, but in most science fiction, every other planet has one, and of course it's an expediency thing. But these are the, if I ever get the reins of your favorite franchise, watch out, because the cultural expansion is going to be intense. I tried to canonize 2 different languages on Krypton when I was working in the Superman office. And maybe I did. I think because there were 2 names for the language over the past 80 years at that time. It was called Kryptonese sometimes and Kryptonian other times. And there was this discussion about, well, how do we explain it? And I was like, there's nothing to explain. They can just be 2 different languages, or they can be different dialects of the same one, which I think we ended up putting in Supergirl.
That's cool. Nice.
Speaking of language, as I was doing not only a rewatch of the Ewoks films from the 90s, and then also reading your comic series again, Wicket speaks Basic, or as we know as English. And I didn't realize that back in the 80s when these were nostalgic for me and I was watching them all the time. But then I watched again and I'm like, wait a minute, Wicket is speaking English, or, to communicate with the main characters. And then I saw, Steve, that you incorporated that in certain panels in the comic as well to show that he does learn how to communicate with the humans or the people who speak Basic on the planet.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, Ewoks wasn't technically like a specific, it's been 40 years since, for example, Caravan of Courage.
Mm-hmm.
But the hope was to commemorate that and do something that sort of canonizes, at least for the comics, fun stuff that we all were excited about from the animated series, from the movies, and all that stuff that hadn't really come back out of Legends and things like that. So the topic of how much English Wicket could speak was part of that, right? Because sometimes it's very, very good. I believe he can also speak English in one of the live action movies. I could be wrong, though, because it's been a minute. Oh, I feel like it's the second. I feel like it's Battle for Endor, but again, I'm misremembering.
No, you're right.
So it became, how much. And then once we decided that he was going to be able to, well, then as you saw, not only is it there, but we take advantage of who can understand what, between XSEV with Cole Orbank and of course and 4LOM, it becomes a tactic who can speak what language where in the book, which is something that I'm really proud of. I'll also reveal, to my shame, maybe you've had the same experience. It took working on this book for me to realize that 4LOM's name is 4LOM and not Forlom.
Yeah. Well, I grew up naming him or saying his name is 4Elam for the longest time as for short.
Actually,
but then seeing it written out, I'm like, I might be wrong on this.
I was like the first. I've never been so embarrassed to be on the planning calls for this, and they were like, "No, actually, it's." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Did they do this as they told you? They did push the glasses up.
Actually, I don't recall Pablo wearing glasses, but he seemed to do it. That was the vibe.
Actually,
we've all made that mistake.
I had Ethan Sachs on a couple summers ago, and I talked about his bounty hunter's run, and LOM was in his run a lot, and he corrected me as well. I had never realized, and he explained that in Star Wars, the story group has told us they want you to, say the name. You're not spelling it out. Like, it's not a 4LOM, or not 4LOM, it's 4LOM.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I never knew that.
I learned that very quickly, and then I regret
it. To me, and I was like...
how long our new droid's name was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've never been the nerd to be corrected. I've always done the other side of that. It's interesting in my place.
I would much rather be corrected by the comic book writer than the guy standing behind the counter at the comic book shop.
Yes. Or at a convention.
Imagine being the comic book writer and getting corrected about your own work by the guy. You got to be careful in that situation because, he almost causes fucking singularity when that happens.
Oh, well, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, maybe I shouldn't be here.
Yeah, it is possible to escape. It's possible.
Yeah. Maybe they chose
the right route to escape, but it is challenging.
Steve, I want to ask,
man.
We talked about your history of DC, and you came over to Marvel the last couple of years now, and how did you get roped into working in Star Wars? How did that process go? Did they approach you, or did you show interest in that?
Well, a lot of, opportunities are, relationship based. Of course, getting the job relies on talent. Getting the chance to show the talent is what comes from relationships. So the reason that's germane to this is that my friend Mark, who edits the Star Wars line, is also the person who edited Curse of the Man-Thing, which was my first Marvel work to hit the stands. So it actually became like we had a good time on Man-Thing. What else could we do? And most of his stuff was Star Wars. So the through line there is actually the folks behind the book. We'd had a great time on Man-Thing. Mark is mostly the Star Wars editor, so that was the natural next step. At least that's what I like to think.
Well, that was around the time that Marvel started writing Star Wars again, correct? After the acquisition.
We were a little deep. Time is a flat circle and amorphous even at that. But I feel like the run. I think the stuff I did, like the Life Day stuff, came out maybe when Charles was the writer of the lead Star Wars book.
Right. 2021 is when Life Day came out for you.
Yeah, so that would have been, but they picked up, when did they pick up Star Wars? In 2015?
2015.
We were pretty deep into it.
Yeah, that was Jason. Yeah.
But it's very amusing that Life Day, when you look at what I've done, for the most part, it is either helping with or polishing up things from the 80s and before that, let's say, have a somewhat complicated legacy. Yes. So maybe I don't know what else I could possibly do. Maybe is the Star Tours character canonized at this point? Like I just wonder what else.
No, yeah, the Star Wars Star Cruiser was in the Skeleton Crew series.
Oh, god damn it. Well, I'm sure it'll be something. I'll make, as a kid, I made a custom action figure of the original human Jabba the Hutt. This is before the special edition came out. So the way that I had rectified it in my mind, what would then be later called headcanon, was that the Scottish guy from the first movie was like the stand-in. Like, you didn't get to meet the real Jabba unless you were a certain level of criminal. So he just sends fur-covered Scottish men out instead. But I even did a custom figure of that character. So maybe my next book will be Old Scottish Jabba body double, and it'll be a one-shot. But no, I think it was Life Day was amusing to me because it had been the one thing from Star Wars I hadn't watched. And I'm going to confess to folks, if they haven't seen it, it is as absurd as everybody says. I was like, it couldn't possibly be what everybody says. And then I got to when Harvey Korman was Space Julia Child with 4 arms or 6 arms or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, it definitely is.
Definitely is. And more.
But I watched that whole thing for this book, and I consider that an accomplishment.
It is.
However, I will point out though, every Life Day, November 17th, every year, how many people post a picture of your comic on Instagram?
You know what? I didn't know that was the canonical Life Day. Funny, it's also my anniversary. So,
oh, it's funny. Are you friends with David Boer?
Yes, we share the same anniversary, and we forget and remember every year.
Yeah, I see him all the time, and I always congratulate him and tell him happy anniversary whenever I see him.
Well, it's true, and I had no idea it was Life Day, but it does appear even more synchronicitous at this point.
That is funny.
Through the Force, all things are possible, I guess.
Yeah, I think I even have my own Life Day post with your comic on it next to my Chewy pop with the robe and everything.
I mean, we love you for it. I think we took the best from that and brought it in. So I do remain proud of that book. Also, it's where I met Paul Fry, who would go on to be the first person I worked on Spider-Man 2099 with. So you can see how sort of teams evolve through collaboration.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. You know, since you mentioned dusting off old stuff, I think you ought to get a run at a R2 and 3PO Droids miniseries.
Oh my God.
Why not? You did Ewoks.
You did Ewoks. Might as well do
Droids. Is that just because you love the Ewoks theme, but you really love the Droids cartoon theme? Is that why?
I tried to watch the Ewoks
music.
Oh, I mean, the weird, like...
Oh, it is so
almost
hard.
like Steve Miller Band opening.
Yeah.
It's really something. Listen, I would do it. It would be fun. It would be there would be so many language jokes in there. Like tens of people would buy it.
Tens of people. Hey, I'm one of them, because I would like to see another extended edition with your work in here as well. Get your comics on the back of this one.
Exactly.
Oh, man. I have that version. I have the Ewoks version of that. I bought it before the miniseries. It's up in the permanent collection.
I wanted to ask you, how much did you research the original series and the cartoon and the movies to write your 4-issue miniseries?
Well, similarly, so Ewoks were my thing. I was right in the age group for me to be super into them, and so I'd already watched ironic. It is droids, as you had said, so I was not as into the droid show. I would have to sit down and watch it with eyes open, but I'd watched the Ewoks cartoon. I'd seen both the movies, and I was really into people like Logray, because I never liked the main character, so he was my guy when I was younger. Tebow close second because he was so tall, but so I was already pretty into it. I mean, again, it's fortuitous. There are aspects of Star Wars that I'm less familiar with. But I mean, when I was a kid, I would go skiing with my father every Sunday, come home, and I would watch the same ratty VHS of Return of the Jedi. So, and I was there for the Ewoks. So this was not a hard gig for me. It was more it was more just exciting to see how much we could fit in and how much we could celebrate. And the same would go for Mike Basso, who's the editor. He's a huge, huge fan. So I mean, we already know what we'd do in a sequel if we ever got one. But it was more just amazing to get the keys to the Forest Kingdom, and get to work with some of this stuff, because it is, I mean, for both of us, this was our inroad to Star Wars. So I was very lucky with this. Unlike having not seen the holiday special, I had worn out Return of the Jedi, and I had seen the live action movies. There was a time when we were trying to see if we could even make the human characters from some of those work, but it just wasn't a fit for this. But I was lucky. So as it comes to research, it was more like getting a chance to go and revisit that stuff. Barely felt like work, because it's all stuff I already loved.
You mentioned that you didn't add some of the human characters. Is that why Noah was not included in it?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but the note behind the note is that it's not called Ewoks and Humans. So the real answer is we wanted them to be the capital, caps lock stars of the book. As much as I love some of those other characters.
Makes sense.
But I mean, that being said, if we come back and the pitch is there, we'll see what we can do. That was actually a similar discussion we were talking about, not that it ever made on the page, but on the topic again of different names for different things. it's never really said, but we kind of decided, like, people like Logray, when they do magic, magic, doesn't technically exist most likely in the Star Wars universe. He's probably using the Force, but on Endor, they don't, they have no concept of it. That doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
They call it the forest spirit or the nature spirit. But, it was just, interesting conversation to have when we're putting it in our minds and how these characters do things. A lot of what they would call intuition or things like that, like, are, maybe these characters are force sensitive, but on Endor, that's just not a thing. They have different names for it and interact with it in a different way. But anyway, yes, I would have loved it. I mean, and that came up as well because I believe Battle for Endor has like wizards and things in it.
There is a witch that I think people have changed the headcanon to be a Night Sister now.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an easy explanation.
I think in Legends
there's also
made her a Night Sister in Legends, I believe. So
yeah, in Legends, they did.
Obviously, it's not canon now, but they had kind of retroactively made her a Night Sister. I wanted to ask.
And then you also have, I believe it's Morag too in the cartoon series uses magic as well.
Oh yeah, there are a couple.
In the movies, when you see Logray using magic, everything has a green color to it, and it makes me wonder if he's tapping into the Night Sister magic as opposed to the Force.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, until it's on the page, as I often say with comics, anything is possible. So it's one of the reasons that it's fun to theorize. But I think that the more complexity and the less like hard and fast answers there are about things, I think the more lived in a science fiction or a genre world becomes. So these are all things that, discussions like this are what excites me when we get to have them about books.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that Logray is your favorite character in the Ewok universe?
Back then, but it's hard not to like, it's hard not to like Asha. She's basically like Ewok Batman plus Tarzan. So, and I mean, we put her in the book, right? So it's hard not to have that be my answer now. Of course, I love the guy we made up for the book, but you can't vote for your own kid. So.
Is that Midro?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Midro. We basically decided he was the Ewok version of Boo Radley, and I liked his little like his little scar. He was a little badass, but he was still cuddly. But also like didn't know what he didn't know. Some of my favorite moments were like him thinking that he's really down with the Forest, but Ash is like, no, you're fucking terrible still. But, like you have no idea.
Right.
So he was a blast, but no, it's got to be her. I like the tension with her family. I like her story. I mean, I gave her the Kaneda speeder bike kick in the book.
Yeah.
Because we love her. So she's probably my favorite.
Nick, what is yours?
Wicket, it's a basic answer. He's always been my favorite. But after the series, I definitely like Midro a lot. I mean, he was a very interesting character. I love the scar. It's very distinct. He reminds me of like a old war vet kind of coming around teaching the kids a lesson and taking them on an adventure. So I think he was the highlight for me. And I love
he's the Cup. If you've seen the 1986 Transformers movie, like they always telling his old war stories and a little rickety, and I think that is Midro.
That's literally him. Yeah. No, I thought it was a cool premise too. Like, to not get into too much spoilers for the audience, but the premise is, it's right after Return of the Jedi. Now the Ewoks are like, we're not alone in the universe. How are we going to kind of figure out what to do next? What if people come back? And especially the cruel ones, as they call it, the Empire. I thought it was just a cool premise. Like, I'd never thought about how that changes the Ewoks, a primitive species. Like, when the Empire lands there or when rebels come, like, that changes their whole worldview about a lot of things,
That was the hope. I mean, and and when we started talking about it, there would be, it's easy to forget from the movie point of view because of where we focus on and things like that. I mean, the Empire has been there, obviously, because they have their facility there. So, maybe the rebels were good to them and things like that, and they were. We saw it, but that's not, at minimum, the only interaction they had with people, and most likely not the majority of interactions. So it was a fun thing to pick apart because, they've probably been dealing with the Empire for a while, even if they didn't know what it was, and they most likely were not that into it.
And he still references Leia and the C-3PO as the golden one as well, so they know the difference between who treated them well and who
for sure,
the cruel ones as well. I want to see more of this guy right here.
Oh, we did get him in, huh?
Yeah, at the very last page. I want to see more Teak.
That was a nice little.
That's my
Charlie Brown kind of.
That's my guy right there.
Yeah.
The Where's Waldo page. We had to get as many in as we could, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
There were so many in there.
So many fun little Easter eggs.
But that's my guy right there. And then we saw him in Skeleton Crew briefly or a person of his species, one that had fallen on hard times.
Well, I was really happy. I would have. It would be fun to do more with the underwater kingdom, which you don't really think of for Endor. I would have liked a little more space with him as I think about it, but needs must. As you said, there's a lot of cool stuff to get in.
Oh, you're talking about Orkron?
Yes, and his serpent, his laser shooting.
This guy right here.
That's the guy.
Yeah, I want to see more of him.
Justin with the pulls like that. Prepared.
Oh, I got the whole series. You want to see him?
No, I did not know you had the whole series. You were a massive Ewoks guy. I had no idea.
I am a Star Wars librarian over here.
It is. That's cool.
Yeah, I would love to see more like a Underwater Kingdom series where they have adventures under there.
Well, our other new characters are on Endor somewhere, exploring and living at peace with nature. So who knows? That's actually the easiest thing to pitch. We were wondering how we could make someone different. I said, oh, and he just, he carries his protocol droid around his neck in like a Pele soccer ball net. And they were like, yes,
That's
amazing. So, well, it was fun to have the differing levels of morality amongst them. The minute that character was created, it was, building to the point where he finally just said no to the leader aspect, and because the dude was always going to be a con man. But it's funny. I thought we made him like a class A piece of garbage, but then everybody was far worse than him in Andor. So maybe he should have been even more evil.
I think he fits the tone.
No, I would love to see where he went and explored around the planet after that and what he got into.
Oh, Call Orvang. Yeah. Bring more of Endor. Well, it would be great, and hopefully it can happen. I love those. I love the look of his species. All we knew was we wanted like a big Conan type. I'm just always trying to write Conan, is what you're seeing. But the funny thing is, that's also how I got Transformers, where I basically did what if Grimlock was Conan. Someday I'll stop pitching Conan, but that day has not yet come. So no, I would love to. We didn't even get to see a lot of where the other sort of species and things live and how their cultures vary and things like that, especially things like the Yuzums, who we've established.
Yeah, they showed up out of nowhere.
We'll leave and come back because, we've seen them across the galaxy. I would love a chance to dig into that more. So hopefully we can.
Well, it's because they're busy touring with the Max Rebo band. They've got a tour to do. They
Listen, I am a diehard Figrin Dan and the Modal Nodes guy, so we don't talk about Max Rebo.
No,
he's too. Listen, the Modal Nodes. That's like the punk rock of Tatooine, man. Like Max Rebo, that's like going to see Wayne Newton. I feel.
Well, we don't know if Max Rebo's around anymore after Book of Boba Fett.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, so maybe the Modal Nodes put a hit on him. That's what I'm thinking.
As a kid, I saved up. Do you guys remember that there was a mail away for the entire Figrin Dan band? And I got it, and I would be shocked if looking at that as an adult, those were not 5 of the same exact action figure with different instrument accessories. And if I was not completely had, but you know what? I still love those guys.
Do you still have it?
Yes, because my parents don't throw anything out, but I don't. They're 5 hours away in my family home.
Road trip.
I know. I don't know if I have any. Actually, I have one cool Star Wars thing here, but it's not an action figure. I own the original painted art to one of the Shadows of the Empire trading cards. So that's my Star Wars artifact.
Which character's on it?
It's dealing with Dash, so it's Dash Rendar and Luke. They're dueling.
I will scream that the day that Dash becomes canon again.
Listen. I would like that. I would like a remaster of Shadows of the Empire that looks as good as the Final Fantasy remake. I shouldn't say remaster, a remake. No, I love that book, man. And it was like I played the video game. I bought the novel, Shadows of the Empire, and of course I had the action figures and the trading cards. That book was a little saucy for someone my age to be reading, as I remember it. I feel like Leia definitely hooks up with Prince Shizor.
Yeah, he seduced her pretty well.
Yeah, in a way that is a little more descriptive than I think my parents knew was going to be in the Star Wars book.
Yeah, I read that at the age of 11, and I went, should I be reading this?
Some of these authors, man, I think it was one of the Night Sister series where like someone like Leia specifically gets like force electrified like in her breast. And I was just kind of like, what happened to you? I don't know, really? Richard D. Anderson, whoever wrote that. I have no idea who wrote that.
Yeah, there's some questionable things in some of those older Star Wars books.
I mean, listen, naked she's are a big part of my sexual awakening, so I suppose we have that.
I mean, he's a handsome man.
I mean, I say that John Jones is my favorite character. What is Prince Shizor but the grown-up choice for someone with the John Jones tastes, right?
It's those pheromones none can resist.
Apparently.
Exactly.
It's the green Klingon head for me, actually, not to cross-reference. That's what actually does it.
Is it the top knot that does it?
Stop. This is a generally all ages podcast. How dare you?
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, sorry, got carried away.
No, that's
But I was very appreciative of how much research went into the series, where you added so many characters from this TV series, the movies, the comic series from the 80s. Like, you even put in the character that pulls Mace's arm into the tree.
I mean, yes.
Oh,
The Temptor. The one that has a...
Yes, because its tongue is fuzzy. I listen, like, sometimes it's not a complicated thing. That is in there because its tongue is fuzzy, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, like you even included characters like that. I'm like, how much research did this guy do?
a lot.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of time on our hands as creators to
Plenty.
To read deep into the night. It's what happens when you're nocturnal. But as I said, this one was easy because this is all stuff that I already knew and loved.
Okay. So are we hoping to see a new Shadows of the Empire comic series written by you in the future?
I mean, listen. I mean, like, we, including me, are hoping, but that is not even a tease from me, at all. Trust me. But I would do it in a second.
Okay.
Famously, probably 20 years ago, if not more, Mark Waid told Marvel that he would write Fantastic Four for $1 if he could do it with Mike Wieringo. And I would offer a similar deal to do Shadows of the Empire. But there's cool. Nothing like, this is not like a secret, like, oh, let's decode Steve's message. It is a dream. It's a dream.
If there's a Kickstarter, I will submit money immediately.
You don't need to bribe massive corporations that could buy and melt down and reforge my soul with
They'll do that for free.
Well, if you want to do it as a solo project outside of Marvel, I would join the Kickstarter for that.
Love that.
What one letter could I change in order to make
a lowercase letter?
Shadow of that Empire. Yeah. And it just we never say which one. It's just which one.
You just turn the R in Star Wars backwards. We've all seen that.
That's what you gotta do.
Listen, for years I wanted the Spaceballs license because there's so much to satirize, and then, like, here 98-year-old Mel Brooks ate my lunch last week by announcing Spaceballs 2, finally.
Yeah.
Killing me, man. I guess it's okay that he, the creator of that, would like to do it. But what about my comics? God damn it.
What does he call it? The quest for more money?
That's the joke, yes, and I would love it if that's what it really ended up being called. I've also heard, I think in an interview I read, he's thinking about calling it Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2.
That would be nice.
I just watched that last night, and while some of it was a little whatever, I still was so amused by the opening shot of, like, the 10-minute shot of the ship that just never ends and dunks on Alien. Is so good.
That's fun.
I mean, there are certain sight gags that will get me no matter how many times I see it, such as the plaid light speed effect, which is just so stupid, but in such a delightful way.
I love the nav officer who does the sound effects, or he's the radio officer.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about the beeps, the cheeps, and the creeps, and he does all the sound effects for it.
Oh my god. Yes, no, he is great. I mean, the dumber a gag is, the more I'm probably going to be amused by it. So, like, actual jam coming down their screens, very stupid. But again, I don't know. I'm a weird person. The only good part of Valerian to me, the Luc Besson movie, was where you find out that Cara Delevingne's hat is actually a giant juicer, and they're going to eat her.
Is that the one that came out like 6, 7, 8 years ago?
Probably, because, yeah, that would make sense. Because I saw it with Frank Barberi, who also is a comic writer and who also loves the sight gag, and we both agreed that was the best joke in the movie. To be fair, it's pretty good. But it's also dumb as shit, which sums up what I look for in a visual gag.
It reminded me of, like, a more advanced Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, almost mixed with, like, Fifth Element type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree. I think it couldn't decide on its tone, and that was one of my issues. But I also, I mean, not to out myself here, but I also love Fifth Element and consider it nearly perfect in tone, because it's a tightrope. So I feel like you can't necessarily get too close to that without falling off, especially if you've already walked it once. So I wasn't really surprised, but it had some fun things. I mean, I will say, My fiance did not like Fifth Element, and it was very challenging for me. But we overcame it. We overcame it.
Take the ring back.
Well, I thought about it, but I decided to rise above. I mean, how can you not like a movie where Chris Rock is Ruby Rod? How can you not like a movie where Bruce Willis's mother, who might as well be my mother, says, "I regret ever pushing you out," which is one of the roughest things.
I still say multipass to this day, and people don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, those people are fools, is what I would say.
Agreed.
If you can't say, I mean, if they don't get multipass, then what happens when you say Aziz Light? I mean, even less.
No culture in today's society. So, Nick, I believe you wanted to ask, I think we already touched on it, but Steve, what is next? Marvel, DC, I know you're doing Exo Manowar pretty soon, you said. Anything else?
Yeah, there's so Exo Manowar from Valiant is going to be hitting this fall. And we have, I mean, honestly, every time I see new art come in, I am flabbergasted. And I don't use that word lightly or seriously that often, but it applies here. I've even posted some on Blue Sky last week. It's just going to be a gorgeous, gorgeous book. So that's coming out this summer. I'm part of the Godzilla vs. America series. I'm doing the Godzilla vs. Boston issue along with one other creative team. Really, really excited about my short is with Matt Emmons, who's an incredible artist. He does books like The Gardener and Council of Frogs. Kind of like a 2025 David Peterson, if folks read Mouse Guard. Like that's kind of where Matt's working. And I said I really only want to do it if I can do it with him. Being in Boston, where we have relative for America a deeper history than other cities, because it's one of the older cities in the country, I decided we were going to do something a little different. We were going to set in the present. So this is a story set in the 1800s, and it is essentially like a Herman Melville tale, but instead of being about a giant white whale, it's about the gorilla whale, which is etymologically what Godzilla means in Japanese. So we are doing an 1800s Godzilla story, which I'm really, really excited for. For fans of Atomic Breath, he only has fire breath in the 1800s, so you may miss out, but otherwise it's going to be really, really good.
Is this taking off the coast of Boston? Is that where it will take place?
Well, you can't. Well, I mean, so yes, but is it really a Godzilla story if there's not a little bit of city trouncing? So yeah. he may come inland a little bit, and then he gets defeated by another strange but true aspect of Boston history, which folks will see when they pick it up, and which I can talk about when we're not recording. But yeah, man, I'm all over the place. Scarlet Witch is running through this summer. Astonishing Avengers is still coming out. That is the lead Avengers book on Marvel Unlimited. It's digital first. It's vertical streaming. And for folks who love big Avengers teams and just classic, fun, forward storytelling, that's what we're doing. You're going to get Avengers stories unlike any other in Astonishing. We're just in the midst of a pro wrestling inspired arc where the team has to go undercover in Unlimited Class Wrestling. To root out some secret death matches. She-Thing is the guest star. And then after that, we have a brief visit from both Moondragon and and a face from 2099 as the High Evolutionary goes to war with Doctor Doom. And after that, we have a story that you could only find in Astonishing Avengers, where Jarvis gets sucked into the Ideaverse, which we had in Scarlet Witch number 8 or 7, I forget. And there, the Avengers leap in to save him, but when they arrive, they're captured, and Jarvis has to form his own team to save his friends. And being an avid reader and being in the Ideaverse, he forms the Avenging Literary Society, which is him, Jay Gatsby, Captain Ahab, and Hester Prynne. And I'm very excited for that as well. And there's even more to come. So check that out. That's free on Marvel Unlimited. And also, as I said, Magical Mysteries of Shazam is going to be on DC Go, another vertical scroll. One of the most gorgeous books I've ever been part of. Giovanni Pota, who I worked with at Vault, is drawing the series, and he's just incredible. He's made to draw these characters. And, you're going to see even more from me. You're going to see some more one-shots, a Dr. Nambu one-shot, a Joe one-shot, both from the Gatchaman franchise. You're going to see another miniseries from me focusing on Red Impulse, the daring jet fighters that support the main team. And, there's even more. The collected edition of Ripperland is coming out this summer. Ripperland, one of my favorite originals I've ever done. It is From Hell Meets Westworld that I wrote with my friend John Harris Dunning. And I could ramble on. The nice thing about having a dream job is you get to make stuff up for a living and you get to have a great time. So folks may ask, how do I work this much? Why do I work this much? The answer is there's nothing I'd rather be doing. So I'm lucky to be here, and there's going to be a lot more coming out, even than what I've discussed on this podcast.
That's awesome, man.
Oh, man. I know a bunch of us would love your job.
Yes, that would be an awesome job, a fun job. Where could, say, somebody follow all your work or follow you to keep up with all this stuff? Because you have a long list of things that I've already forgotten that you've already mentioned.
Blue Sky is where I post work-related stuff. I'm at
Okay.
the Steve Orlando, and I'm on Instagram as well as at the Steve Orlando. I don't really do a ton of work posts, but you will see stuff in my story and stuff there on
Okay.
Instagram. But Blue Sky is definitely a place where I will talk about upcoming work news.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely.
Any convention appearances anytime soon?
Yes.
Yeah. This weekend, I'm at Washington State SummerCon, which is right between Seattle and Tacoma. I will then be at GalaxyCon New Orleans in July. I'll be at GalaxyCon Raleigh in July. I will be at GalaxyCon Des Moines in September. I'll be at Sioux Falls SuperCon in September. And then the last three, let me plumb the depths of my mind, are New York Comic Con in October, Motor City Comic Con, I think in November, and then GalaxyCon Columbus, Ohio, end of the year in December.
We got to get you out here to
So
the
you're
West
making your way
Coast.
around.
I was just there, so I assume you mean California. I was going to say because I'm going. I was going to say I'm going to Washington this weekend. What do you want, man?
South of that, little south.
But I was just in LA because I'm allowed to say I'm a guest judge on the next All Stars season of Dragula. Which is a horror drag show. So I had to sneak out there to see my friends and shoot a little TV. But hopefully I'll be back soon.
All right, I'll be waiting with my comics to have you sign them all.
Yeah, that sounds a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Steve, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I greatly appreciate your time. Fun talking to you. A very fascinating and diverse background you have in comics. So appreciate that and sharing your experiences and letting us pick your mind for a little bit. I will say the trade paperback for Ewoks comes out, is it July the 8th? Is that correct?
I would have to look it up because the dates are different depending on, but I'm cheating right now.
It's the 11th.
So it looks like it is on Amazon on the 8th, which probably means, yes, the 11th would probably be about right for direct market comic book stores and everywhere else.
Okay. Well, yeah, I will post a link to pre-order your Ewoks series, and if people can, definitely support your local comic book stores. You'll probably find a lot of other Steve's work there as well. Definitely support those in this time of need. The industry really appreciates that. I will plug a link to Steve's socials in the description as well. And then also we'll post a link to the Children in Conflict nonprofit that I talked about at the top of the show. And Steve, anytime you want to come talk about Star Wars or have any other ideas for Star Wars, you can jump on and talk to us all day about it because we love Star Wars here.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it.
Or just comics in general.
Or just
all day long.
Yes, we can talk about comics all day.
Yeah.
Yes, for the podcast Star Wars. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in. Steve, appreciate your time again. Justin, as always, thank you for doing the extensive research because I did not have time, and I'm glad you did. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
May the Force be with you guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.